Each day, the disciples sat, ate, and walked with Jesus. They noticed how he practiced prayer like a lifeline. So the disciples asked to be taught how to pray. And Jesus began by saying, "When you pray,
Hello, this is When You Pray. Welcome to the 5th episode in the series of the Prayer of Jacob. I am Adefuye Adefuye. The prayer is found in Genesis chapter 32, and I encourage you to read the whole chapter. When you do, you will notice two segments to Jacob's prayer. The first segment is in verse 7 to verse 12, and then the second one is from 24 to 31. And then in between, we'll say what Jacob did. So let's start with the first segment, and that's from verse 7. But the prayer actually starts in verse 9, where Jacob says, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, the Lord who told me, go back to your country and to your kindred, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. Indeed, with only my staff I came across the Jordan, but now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid that he may come and attack me and the mothers and children with me. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, too numerous to count." That's the first segment of his prayer. And then what does Jacob do after praying? From verse 13 to 21, we'll see how he prepares gifts and sends them ahead of him. He puts them in the hands of his various servants to go ahead of him. And then from verse 22 to verse 23, we see how he takes the family of 2 wives, 2 maidservants, and his 11 sons, and he across the shallow part of Jabbok River. And then when he's done that, he retreats to a place, and when the Bible says in verse 24, when he was left alone, and there a man wrestled with him until daybreak. So after praying, he does the needful, and then he relaxes, he retreats to a place, and in that moment is the second segment of the prayer. So let's see the second segment of the prayer. Verse 25, from verse 24 again. So Jacob was left all alone, and there a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Some people think it was an angel, and then there are others who believe that this is angel in form of God. This is God himself wrestling with Jacob. When the man saw that he could not overpower Jacob, he struck the socket of Jacob's hip and dislocated it as they wrestled. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go until you bless me." "What is your name?" the man asked. "Jacob," he replied. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and you have prevailed." And Jacob requested, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask my name?" Then he blessed Jacob there. So Jacob named the place Peniel. It's because of that blessing that we believe it is not just an angel, this is God himself. So Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "Indeed, I have seen God face to face, and my life was spared." The sun rose above him, and he passed by Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Now, what lessons do we learn between the first segment of the prayer and the second segment? I believe that prayer does not exclude doing the needful in the natural. I shouldn't say because I'm praying to pass my exams that I won't study, that I won't put in the necessary effort to understand the subject matter in preparation for my exam. That will be tempting God. And also a married couple looking for a baby, because they believe in prayer and they are praying, does not mean that they don't do the needful in the natural. In fact, you go back again to Genesis, where in the days of Abraham, when God told Abraham that the baby I'm going to give you, through whom the promise will be fulfilled, will be the one given to you by Sarah. And I believe God told him that so that he would do the needful with Sarah, because it's not going to be about immaculate conception. No, you have to do the needful in the natural while you still pray. So Jacob prayed, and still prepared to meet Esau. Another point which I mentioned in the last episode is that in this wrestling, there's no mention of Esau. God shows up and he begins to wrestle Jacob. And then when they are conversing, what's your name? And then he changes his name. And what about Esau? Which is a primary prayer point of Jacob. Well, again, that reminds me, and I'm suspecting a principle here really, that, this is Jacob praying about his brother, as if the brother is a problem, and then what God does is to fix him. He fixes Jacob, and then there's no mention about his brother. And you see this principle in the New Testament. In Luke 10:38-42, for example, Mary and Martha are entertaining Jesus. Martha is busy cooking, trying to entertain Jesus, and Mary is sitting at the feet of Jesus. And what does Martha do? She goes to Jesus and says, "Oh, Lord, do you not care that I'm left alone to do all the cooking and all that? And then, so tell my sister to come and help me in the kitchen." And what does Jesus say? He said, no, Mary, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is necessary. Mary has chosen the good portion that will not be taken away from her. So what does Jesus do? If you look at Jesus coming to show us who God is, so when we see Jesus, we see God. So we see how he entertains questions and answers and probably requests and prayers. That tells us how God does that. So Martha prayed about her sister and tells Jesus to tell her sister to do something, and Jesus says, "No, I'm not doing that. You fix what the problem is with you, and I will help you. And let me identify the problem. You are worried and upset about many things, but your sister has made her own choice. So you fix your worries and anxiety, and I can help you fix them." Then the second instance I see is also in Luke as well, in chapter 12. Jesus is teaching, and in the crowd, somebody shouts out from the crowd, "Tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But what does Jesus say? He just replies them and he says, "Who appointed me a judge or executor between the two of you?" And then he uses that as a teaching point. He says, what does it do? He says, "Watch out, guard yourselves against every form of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." So you see that somebody goes to God about someone, thinking that someone is the problem. God says, you leave them out of this. You fix why that is a problem for you. And then the third instance I see is in John 21. This is after Jesus has risen from the dead. And then, the Bible says it was around for at least 40 days. And then, of course, he restores Peter, who denied him 3 times, and 3 times he asked him, "Do you love me more than this?" So after restoring him, now they are going somewhere. From verse 20, let me read that bit. Peter turned, after he has been restored, and saw the disciple whom Jesus loved following them. When Peter saw him, he asked, "Lord, what about him?" And then what does Jesus answer? Oh, Jesus says, "If I want him to remain until I return, what is that to you? You follow me." So I see the same principle here. Jacob is praying to God to deliver him from the brother. Then God shows up, and God doesn't even mention the brother. And what does God do? He changes, he helps Jacob to change. Jacob now becomes Israel. He identifies something in Jacob. He says, "You are a prince with God and with man. You have striven, you have wrestled with God and with man, and you have prevailed. So your name changes from today. You are now Israel." That change in him, I believe, is strong enough to affect everything around him, including his brother's attitude towards him. His brother is coming looking for Jacob, and then Israel shows up. And so one of the things I've learned, I don't know what you are picking from this, but one of the things I've learned is that it's good for me to pray for people, but not about them, thinking they are the problems I have. No, I go to God. It touches my heart. It does something in me, and that affects how I see people, and it also affects how people see me, an attitude of people towards me. That's the lesson I'm picking from this. So what lessons are you picking from this? Until we come your way again, this is When You Pray with Adewale Adefuye.
Thanks for watching. What did you hear? More importantly, what will you do with what you've heard? Remember, prayer is not mere activity or ritual, but a license for heaven's interference.